A lot of MLB teams have answered a lot of questions in their farm systems in the month of August. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. If this is your first time on the show, welcome. We hope you do us a favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever it might be. To the everydayer, special welcome back to you. And if you're on YouTube, do us a favor, like the video, leave a comment for us, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when we drop a new episode. A lot of MLB teams have had some questions, some lingering questions that got answered in the month of August. And I want to start at the highest level, start at AAA. And I want to start with one of the preeminent teams in baseball history in the New York Yankees. And specifically, the question that I think they were able to answer, not only just in the month of August, but in the last week, was who is going to play left field in New York in 2024? Because unfortunately, if you are the New York Yankees, we are looking at 2024. And you're not mathematically eliminated, but we are looking at that. And so I think you saw Everson Pereira come up. He's been playing left field every day. Oftentimes he's batting seventh. He batted cleanup on Sunday. That was interesting. But you have that. And then you've also had Jasson Dominguez in AAA. And here's what Jasson Dominguez has done in the first week. The first 7 games he has played in AAA. 4 of them in center field, 2 of them in left field. 478, 556, 652 slash line. Absurd. 3 extra base hits. It was 2 doubles and a triple, so no home runs, but 10 RBIs in those games. 4 runs scored, 4 walks to 2 strikeouts, and 1 for 2 on stolen bases. It feels, okay, so one, you have an inflection point to make with Harrison Bader, right? You have to figure out what is going to happen with Harrison Bader. Are we going to re-sign him? Is he going to be a free agent? But outside of that, you're now in the scenario where Everson Pereira has looked okay as your left fielder. Aaron Judge obviously can play right field when he's perfectly healthy. He can play right field every day. You can use Giancarlo Stanton as the DH. That's the preferred way to do this versus having him play the field. But you've seen Jasson Dominguez now not do that thing he normally does where it takes him some time to acclimate to a new level. He's traditionally, it feels like a slow starter when he gets promoted, but he has hit the ground running in AAA. And so now you have options as far as going into the year next year. You know that Oswaldo Cabrera can play outfield. You know that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can play the outfield. He's played center. I think he played center Friday and Monday. And you now have options of IKF's going to be probably pretty cheap if you want to keep him around as a utility option. But you have outfield options now because you have Pereira. Because you know that you're going to be able to have Jasson Dominguez at some point in time next season. I'm not saying you have to call Jasson Dominguez up right now. I'm not saying that he should open next year as your starting, as one of your starting outfielders at the major league level. Although he is a top 100 prospect in at least 2 of the 3 prospect rankings. And so if you call Jasson Dominguez up to start the year next year, just like you had with Anthony Volpe, you have an option to get a prospect promotion incentive pick if he gets to the major league level and rakes and finishes in the top 2 of the Rookie of the Year voting for the American League. Now, the other thing to remember is even if he doesn't end up in the top 2, if you still meet the conditions, he still is in the top 100 of 2 of the 3 lists, and he gets the full year of service time in his first year, he's still eligible to get you a pick down the line if he's an MVP winner or runner-up. So that's the decision you have to make. It took a little bit longer to get him to AAA than you thought it was going to. And so the question you've changed the question from do we have guys to play in the outfield next year to is Jasson Dominguez ready to open the year as a starting left fielder in New York or starting center fielder in New York? Another team that's not really answered a question, even though they've tried, is the Cincinnati Reds. You have all of this young talent in the infield, right? Matt McClain playing shortstop and then second base. You've called Noelvi Marte up to play third. You had Spencer Steer, who's been all around the field, including left field. Christian Encarnacion Strand at first. He was sharing time with Joey Votto. Votto's now on the injured list. But the outfield's been a little bit of a question. And Jose Barrero is a guy that played some shortstop and some center field at the major league level before you called a lot of these guys up. He's been back in AAA about 56 games, and you were hoping you could transition him to center field and that the offense would come around so that you didn't have to move somebody who has performed at the major league level, move them to center field. And you haven't really answered the question of, can Jose Barrero be our starting center fielder? 56 games in AAA, 271, 331, 562. You love the slug. 13 home runs, 31 extra base hits. So that is great. 12 walks to 76 strikeouts in 56 games. You don't love that. Perfect 14-14 on stolen bases, but it's a chase rate over 30%. And if that's your chase rate in AAA, what's going to happen when you're in MLB and you're facing the better pitchers? The big issue for Jose Barrero that Cincinnati has to figure out before they figure out can he be our starting center fielder next year is, can you get him better against off-speed pitches? He has a 46.4% contact rate versus off-speed pitches. Jose Barrero struggles with a changeup. And as soon as that scouting report gets out, you're going to see him at the major league level get nothing but changeups until you can figure out how to fix it. And for a team that has so much young pitching and young position player talent that has played well at the major league level between Elly De La Cruz, Matt McClain, all these, it's an incredibly fun roster. And you don't stand to lose a ton of key contributors off of that other than probably Joey Votto. And if you can figure out the outfield, and if you can get impact contributors in the outfield, this all of a sudden is a little bit of a dangerous team in a division that's not been that great. Didn't fully answer the question unless you consider this question to be answered, no, Jose Barrero cannot be our center fielder next year. But a team that did answer the question of why did we not trade for more pitchers at the trade deadline is the Baltimore Orioles. They got DL Hall back from the injured list and used him in relief. The lefty had 6 games in AAA in the month of August. Threw 7 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, with 4 walks and 18 strikeouts. And he was called up over the weekend after Felix Bautista has some sort of UCL issue. I believe it's a tear. They haven't, as of time of recording, I haven't seen where they've come out and explicitly said, this is what's wrong with the UCL, but it's never good. And so what DL Hall does, he's a lefty with phenomenal velocity, right? Looking at what he did as a reliever and how he changed his pitch mix a bit. In those 6 AAA outings, that's 7 2/3 innings, he threw about 38% four-seam fastballs, averaged 96 miles an hour. He can reach back and get some more with it, but he averaged 96, which is plenty healthy, especially for a lefty. That's significantly above average velocity for a lefty. He has a very good changeup. He throws about 31% of the time, averages right around 84 miles an hour, so it's more than 10 mile an hour separation in velocity. And then it comes out of the same arm slot and the same arm speed as the fastball. So disguises really well. It's going to be fun to watch the Pitching Ninja videos on those. He has a slider. He threw about 16% of the time. Came in mid-80s, 85, 86. It's not a full sweeper, but it has some sweep to it. It's more sweep than two-plane break. It's not a true sweeper, but it's not that true pure darting down and away movement of a typical two-plane break slider. It's more probably 2/3 sweep, 1/3 vertical drop. And so coming in mid-80s or so, again, it throws about 16% of the time. He threw a sinker, 96 miles an hour, same velocity as the four-seamer, threw it 8% of the time, and then has a big loopy curveball, sits right around 80 miles an hour, threw it 6% of the time. So being a starter that they've converted to relief, it's a scenario where he's got multiple pitches where he can get guys out. And always a thing that's helpful for a reliever who has more than 2 pitches, and in this case has 3 that he's comfortable throwing, as well as 2 more that he can mix in. Very useful thing for a reliever to have, and hopefully he can step up and take some key innings that Felix Bautista was throwing. In just a minute, we have some teams that answer some questions in AA, including the St. Louis Cardinals and how they handled the trade deadline, and the Yankees possibly figuring out some starting pitching options for the future. We'll get to those next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. If you want the chance to win more money with less picks, head to Sleeper, the #1 sports app where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. If you think Aaron Judge is going to hit a home run tonight, you can go on Sleeper and swing for the fences with that 100 times payout. You just choose 2 or more players that you like and select more or less on whatever stat category. Home runs, strikeouts, hits, whatever it might be. You get your picks right and you can win big. But the way the 100 times thing comes in is dynamic payouts are live. Anthony Volpe and Aaron Judge do not have the same chance on any given at-bat to hit a home run. But on other apps, they have a preset multiplier based on the number of legs in a contest. It doesn't matter which player is more or less likely to hit the home run. They give you the same odds. Sleeper is different. Dynamic payout, each player projection has its own multiplier attached to it based on how likely it is that player achieves that specific statistical milestone. You can get higher payouts than other apps with less picks. Use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details, but they are currently operational in over 30 states, so check out Sleeper today. Okay, answering some questions in AA. The St. Louis Cardinals, one of the big deals they made at the trade deadline was trading Jordan Montgomery to the Texas Rangers, and they got back infielder Thomas Saggese. And the question is, was this a good move? And 2, what does this do for us in the future as we try to figure out we need better pitching in this system? 1, it looks in the month of August like it's worked out. He's played 24 games, how's Thomas Saggese, in AA. 363, 444, 736 slash line. 9 home runs and 14 extra base hits. 14 walks to 25 strikeouts, 2-2 on stolen bases. So 207 WRC plus in the month of August. He's one of the hottest hitters in the entire minor leagues for the month of August. So offensively, it's totally worked out, right? Now, defensively, a little bit more of a question about where he's going to play, but I think you figured out now he's going to be playing second base for you. 1, because Nolan Arenado exists and is at third base. But then 2, looking at what he's been able to do. 933 fielding percentage. He started 3 games at third base. 957 at second base in his 19 games. It's 4 errors, I think. And then 2 starts at DH. Is he going to be a plus defender at second base? He is not. But I think what you've learned is if you were to look at making a trade to try and bring in some pitching talent, and this front office has acknowledged that the traditional Cardinals model of sinker slider, pitch to contact guys doesn't work with the current makeup of this roster where you have guys like a Nolan Gorman playing second base that aren't defensively as good. Plus, this new era of where hitters are, you need guys with swing and miss stuff. If you wanted to, you have the option to trade a Paul Goldschmidt. He has, I believe, 1 more year of contractual control after this season. You have the option to make a trade over the winter of a Paul Goldschmidt, knowing you have multiple options to fill at third base. You can go, at multiple options to go and fill at first base. You can look at, do we platoon Nolan Gorman and Luken Baker at first base? Luken Baker has had a revolutionary year in AAA and is currently on your bench right now in St. Louis. I think he's played once in the last week. He DH'd. And so you have the option. He is a right-handed hitting hitter. Nolan Gorman's a lefty. You can play both of them at first base. Nolan Gorman can also play some third for you. He played third sometime over the weekend when Nolan Arenado got a day off. And you could have Thomas Saggese at second, who could give you enough defense. You could have Nolan Gorman and Luken Baker platooning at first base. You also have the option Tommy Edman has played a lot of second base and center field, but a lot of second base recently since Mason Wynn was called up. And you can play Saggese at first, and then Gorman and Baker can platoon at DH. You have a lot of different options, but if you were to move Paul Goldschmidt, you know that by the midpoint of next year, probably, the way that Saggese has continued to rake in AA, you'll have confidence in knowing that you can plug him into that major league roster and replace a lot, not all. It's not hard to replace Paul Goldschmidt, but you can replace a lot of that production with guys currently on the roster, and maybe you can use Paul Goldschmidt to help get some pieces to compete in the future. I think for baseball in general, we learned that the tacky baseballs in AA in the Southern League didn't work. And we learned that maybe some of the prospects there are actually better hitters than we gave them credit for. First half and second half numbers, and obviously the AA season is not over, but it's a lot farther along. In the first half of the year, AA hitters, when they were facing pitchers that had those tacky baseballs that gave the advantage to the pitchers, AA hitters were batting .237, .339, .396 as a collective group. They struck out 26.7% of the time, they walked 11.9% of the time, and they had a 70.1% contact percentage. 7 out of 10 swings, they're making contact. In the second half, they've improved in every single statistic across the board except for walks. Second half, they're batting .259, .351, .416 in the second half. 23.1% strikeout rate, 11% walk rate, 73.2% contact. So they got 22 points better in batting average, 12 points better in on base, 20 points better in slugging. They lowered the strikeout rate by 3.6%. They lowered the walk rate by 0.9%, and they increased the contact rate by 3.1%. And there's no better illustration of what those baseballs can do to your numbers than Jasson Chourio, the probably consensus number 2 prospect in all of baseball to everybody, but ESPN has Colson Montgomery number 2 and Jasson Chourio number 3. But the Brewers outfielder, here's what he did in the first half, and here's what he's done so far in the second half. The first half, 71 games for Jasson Chourio. 249, 304, 410. 11 home runs, 25 extra base hits, again in 71 games. 22 walks to 69 strikeouts, 23-26 on stolen bases. In the second half for Jasson Chourio, 34 games so far, so smaller sample size, but still. 340, 390, 571. Increased batting average by almost 100 points. Increased the on base by 85 points. Increased the slugging by 161 points. 8 home runs in 34 games. 16 extra base hits in those 34 games. 11 walks to 26 strikeouts. 11 to 14 on stolen bases. Some of it is guys are naturally better in the middle of the summer than they are when the season first starts, especially if they're playing in a cold weather location. But a lot of it, too, is those baseballs gave pitchers really pretty much unfair advantages. It was MLB legalized sticky stuff for half a season. And now that you've gotten rid of that, some of the numbers have started to stabilize. And then, real quickly, the New York Yankees may have found a starting pitching option for the future. So, right-hand pitcher Richard Fitts is having an okay year if you look at his full season numbers in AA. 23 starts, 9-5 with a 3.16 ERA in 131 innings. He struck out 139 in those 131 innings, 34 walks, 18 home runs allowed. So just under 1 a start, right? But in the month of August, Richard Fitts has 4 starts for the Yankees, 2-0, with an 0.37 ERA, 0.37 ERA for Yankees right-hand pitcher Richard Fitts. 24 and a third innings, 21 strikeouts, 8 walks, 1 home run. That was the 1 run he allowed in the entire month of August. Opponents are batting 161, 240, 241. That's the slash line against Richard Fitts in the month of August. The New York, 1, probably sent him to AAA. 2, the Yankees may have found another starting pitching option by the midpoint or later in the year next year in Richard Fitts. Be very excited about that if you're a Yankees fan. In just a minute, there's some lingering questions MLB teams had about the returns on their first round draft picks. We'll get to that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. Okay, so looking at the return that some of these MLB teams had on their first round. Naturally, one of the places you go to is the Seattle Mariners. They had 3 first-round draft picks, right? And just looking at some of their prospects and what they've done in the month of August, it's been pretty impressive. So Colt Emerson, 17 years old, divided between the complex and A-ball, 1174 OPS. That'll play. Ty Pete, also 17 years old, divided between the complex and an A, the Modesto Nuts, 974 OPS. Ty Pete hit 2 grand slams in the same game on Sunday. Okay? Not part of that's not a draft pick, but Lazaro Montes, 18 years old, between the complex and A-ball, 1035 OPS. Like some of these young players, Gabriel Gonzalez, between A-ball and high A, 866 OPS, age 19. Harry Ford in high A, 840 OPS. This is, Cole Young is like right behind them, like just around on 800 OPS. If you are a Mariners fan, you have to be very excited about the combination of the controllable major league pitching talent that you have called up. George Kirby, Brian Wu, just guy after guy that you have in both your rotation and your bullpen. Matt Brash has a slider from hell. And so you have all of that. And then you combine that with so much young talent in this system that is 2 to 3 years away from realistically starting to knock on the door of a debut. It has to be exciting. Looking at Lazaro Montes, we compared him last week to Yordan Alvarez as far as it's the exact same swing. Colt Emerson, Ty Pete, middle infield options, Harry Ford behind the plate, Cole Young in the outfield. Tons of very attractive options here. You have to be excited about this. And then some of your top draft picks have gotten out to hot starts. Dylan Cruz is in AA. And if you're picking an affiliate to go watch, if you are in the area, you should consider going to AA Harrisburg to go watch the Senators play, because the outfield for AA Harrisburg right now is Dylan Cruz, Robert Hassel, and James Wood. That is a lot of power in an outfield. The left side of the infield is Trey Lipscomb at shortstop and Brady House at third base. That is a fun minor league roster to go watch. Similarly, we should be saying this about the outfield for AA Frisco with the Texas Rangers, because Wyatt Langford is in high A Hickory. And right now, what he is doing in high A Hickory, 314, 455, 586 slash line. 3 home runs, 11 extra base hits, 20 games. He's walked more than he struck out. Wyatt Langford needs to be in AA. And if you put him in AA, he's in AA with Evan Carter and Aaron Zavala. And then those, Harrisburg and Frisco, those are the 2 best outfields in all of minor league baseball when Wyatt Langford gets to Frisco. That's quite an entertaining set of outfields there, and shows you sometimes in that post-draft period right here, if this all lines up right, you can have a lot of fun catching a lot of top prospects in the same place without having to go to a AAA Norfolk, AAA Durham, things like that. A lot of teams have a lot of top talents that are at the same level. Looking at Tampa Bay's system, AA Montgomery has both Carson Williams And Junior Caminero, Carson Williams is playing shortstop. He moved from AAA down to AA. And then Junior Caminero is playing third base. Like, another fun group that you're going to get to watch. And it's two top prospects playing next to one another. I'm lucky enough to get to call those games next week. Tons of fun. In the meantime, if you have questions for the show, tons of ways to get them to us. We do that mailbag every single Monday. I'm on Twitter. We've got a Discord, email, subtext, probably the best way to get them to us. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.